Welcome to the Voice of the People's podcast. I am your host, Joshua X. We are getting ready to dive into some conversations and some discussions centered around politics, people, and power. And, I only know how to do this from the place of being black and living in the rural South. Tuskegee, Alabama, Macon County, Alabama. So I am very appreciative of you just tuning in and checking it out and hearing what yours truly has to say. And watch this, hearing what the people have to say, because this won't be a solo dolo road. This is a road I want to take with you. This road we're going to invite others on this journey onto the podcast to discuss issues pertaining to the everyday life of the people. And as much as you may not know it, or maybe you haven't realized it yet, hopefully you can realize it on today, or rather on tonight when this will be dropping, that hey, politics affects your everyday life. It affects your everyday life, right? I do want to kind of continue giving some some house rules. I don't want to say house rules per se, but I do want to continue just kind of giving you what this podcast is going to be bringing you, and then we'll get into just a small discussion today, a weighty one, but just a small one to kind of push us along and just get us through what has been in Macon County, specifically Tuskegee, some tough few days. And but before we go there, I do want to just kind of give you just some of who I am. I am once again Joshua X. Some know me as Joshua Lewis. That is fine. I will answer to both of them. He and I are one and the same. I am a husband. I'm a father, and I am a spiritual leader, advisor. I'm a pastor, an activist, counselor, just so many things. And I don't say that in a way of a braggadocious way. Hopefully it didn't come off like that. But yeah, a lot of hats, but focused these things in which it seems that I may be spread out and doing. I'm actually, they're actually all very similar. And so I've taken up the task of doing this podcast here. And here's the reason. I want for the voice, or we want for the Voice of the People's podcast to be a space for political education and conversation. Shout out to all those groups that are pushing political education to the masses, and not in hopes of exploiting and taking advantage of the masses, but to educate the masses in a proper way, so that that we can be armed. Information has the potential to free you when applied rightly. And so we want to make sure that this is a place that we can be transparent, be real. And I'm going to just keep it real with you, right? We're going to discuss topics ranging from local governmental structure. You understand the types of forms of government in that local municipalities and whatnot, all the way to violence and to the potholes in the community, and how all of those different areas, or not really different areas, but all these areas are connected. Yes, all these areas are connected. The things are not happening in a vacuum. Even the violence that is happening is not happening in a vacuum. And as much as I would like for this first episode to be one where I'm just really giving y'all either a small intro and letting this episode 0 be just that. However, we seem to be about 5 minutes into episode 0. I guess initial or inaugural, initial the Voice of the People podcast episode. But I want to kind of an episode before an episode. I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. We just mentioned violence. We mentioned how politics and violence and these other things, potholes in the community, lack of certain businesses, and these things are, in the words of Huey Newton, I'm pretty sure many others have echoed it through the corridors of time and history. In his words, he said, all things are political. If he and others who have made that statement that all things are political, if that is true, and I believe that it is to be so, it is true, then we ought to understand politics. We must engage in politics. After we understand, we must attempt to engage. And upon engaging, we must constantly apply pressures. And before we get to that page of this, let's back up. So when we speak of violence, it must be understood that things that are happening in Tuskegee, let's just speak for Tuskegee now, Macon County, if you're listening, anywhere else in Alabama, or even all over the world, right? I want you to understand that violence is not happening in a vacuum, especially violence pertaining to black people, so-called black on black violence. And I hate to even use that term. We know that term is in the political arsenal of conservative Republican groups. And I'm just going to, I should have said this earlier on, but I want to make it known that I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. All right. Nor would I consider myself libertarian. I would consider myself to be along with the black. I'm a stone hewn from the mountain, the great mountain of black radical thought. And so I fall there. If I must fall somewhere, if I must take take a title or some kind of umbrella, I will fall up under the umbrella of the radical intellectual left. and so and you'll get those puns and jokes, corny jokes, maybe a little bit later in our conversation, the episodes. But let's do a return again, back to the discussion on crime. Black men killing black men here. I'm suggesting that we must take into account that these incidents and these types of violent acts are not happening in a vacuum, but they're happening up and against the backdrop of a people who have constantly been used to oppression and hate, right? So much so that they have been miseducated purposefully. They have been mistreated purposefully. Right? And I say they, I'm speaking of we as Africans here in the diaspora, in the Americas, in the South. Right? And to even further add meat to that context, or add, I say meat to it, to further add more to that setting of the context, we must also understand that there has been a purposeful, intentional dismantling of the families, right? But even so, I would say specifically the black family, the man, woman, and the child. And we can go into that all day, but I submit, and maybe I just have to make my case at some point, especially if someone would like to challenge it, because discussion and even argument is good, especially for the truth, when you can temper emotions and tame emotions to a degree. All right, but I would say that the systematic purposeful dismantling and breakdown of the black family was all done for the purpose of further exploiting a people for the benefit of a few, exploiting the masses of people, of black people, let's be clear, for the benefit of a few. Right? And this exploitive system had to remove the humanity of a people, of a man, of a woman, of a child, in order to further exploit them without a guilty conscience. All right. Now, how is that done? Because you said, Joshua X, that it was done strategically, that it was done purposefully, and that there was a dismantling of the black family. Yes, and there was, I would say, a poison injected into black people, black communities. This poison is a poison now. And so, let me say this. We talked about so how did it happen? How did it happen? Well, remember when I was saying that everything is political? And I was giving you that talk? Well, here it is. There has to be a political climate set. All right? There has to be a certain atmosphere set that's conducive to exploitation. And that atmosphere is a wicked and corrupt climate. Right? A climate where the people, watch this, are ignorant, uninformed, unprepared because of their the misinformation or lack of dissemination of information. They're overworked. Right? And so here you have a people who throughout history, and now this is a very, 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 right? I'm not going to say surface, but very cliff noted version. Because there's some things that must still be unpacked, right? But just for the sake of time, and I don't want this to go too long on this episode 0. But these people are people throughout history have been overworked, misinformed, miseducated, mistreated, and purposefully so. Now, that set us, even then, our ancestors, during slave trade, during colonial slavery, and post-slavery, through Jim Crow, through redlining, what you see is politics being ran in an oppressive way. What you see, in order for a city to be, or a town, or a community, to have crime as an infestation, or to have violence as a somewhat of a permanent, to feel like violence is just so prevalent and common. There is a climate, and I know we'll say as much about the spiritual climate, and I say amen to that too. Don't forget, I'm a pastor as well. But there's a political climate, and there has to be at least 1, 2, 3, a few, whether elected, appointed, or otherwise staffed, or even behind the scene influencing, however it is. What I'm saying is, I'm wanting us to assess and to say that when someone is murdered and shot, and there's a prevalent thing, and people are killed, however the means they are killed, when they're being killed all the days long, and then we have a decline in population, and we have all these other different ills and issues and concerns, we must stop and say that, hey, before I go trying to assess and figure out what immediately I can do, I must ask a very, very important question. The question being this: what kind of leadership do I have? And when I speak of leadership, I'm automatically speaking on a political base. I'm speaking of politics. What kind of leadership do I have to where there can be such hurt and harm and self-hate that it moves its way out of the inside of a person and inflicts harm and takes the life of another individual on an ongoing basis, an all too common basis? I must then ask a question: what is leadership doing? Now, I'm speaking, this is a podcast that is centered around politics, people in power. So we will speak to the aspect of, because people are involved not just in politics now, because we know that there's a family breakdown. So we got to, have a strategic plan of action to rebuild that which was purposely broken down. And there are people who will focus in on that and have spaces for that and podcasts for that. And I'm not going to down that. That is needed. But here, right, I don't even want to hear but let's look at the family. I'm speaking to those in power, right? And I say that to whom much is given, much is required. Does that take away the responsibility of each and every individual or citizen, right, to do their part, to do what they need to do as a human, not just as a person? It doesn't take away from that, right? But it does have a heavier weight on it, because the responsibilities and expectations of someone who is not only sworn an oath, right, to a constitution that many ain't really holding close to them anyway in the Americas. So I'm not even going to go there. But just to have a heart beating, that's the same kind of heart that's beating in another human. And to not take your job serious enough, or to not do everything in your ability, even if that thing in your ability to make progress is to move out of the way, to not do everything in your ability to bring about a change in a place and to stop violence in a place. I'm not just talking about gun rallies, people. I'm not just talking about that. Although, putting laws in place that can make it difficult for certain individuals who may not be, should have a difficulty buying a weapon. They may have other issues they need to iron out before they start to look at trying to handle certain things of such power. But I must tell you this. Right? That while we're looking at taking guns off the street as a political answer, we must understand that, hey, that maybe not be the right political answer, because the people who are really hurting and not only hurting but doing the hurting, they're in a place to where they're not going to bring no weapons. Only the people who are the so-called good law-abiding citizens are going to even show up to some kind of a gun rally, and we can pray as well. That is good. That's good. I will say this, though. This is what I'm sure of, is that prayer, although be it necessary, good and proper spiritual discipline, must not be the only tool used in the reconstruction of the city, the black man, the black woman, the black child, the community, the county at large, even around the nation, the state, the nation, and the world. Prayer is good, my folks, my people, good Tuskegee. But here, when I say this, that there must be action, that there must be, along with the vigils, there must be vigilant action, that it is, and what do you mean when you say action? Because let's talk, let's really talk. I mean that there must be, and I want to say this, be careful in the choosing of my wording. There must be some assessing of the root causes of the violent crimes that are going on here. Not just blaming it on the, because here it is. We don't want to just rest and say, yeah, we need to do better. It's not enough to know that we need to do better. We need to know, what is the problem? Why? It was a question that was posed by someone on Facebook that asked a question, because someone had posted, hey, let's pray for the city, or pray for, this and that. This has been going on. And then someone said, there's been so many murders I've been hearing about in the area. Why? Well, see, the why. That's what I want to address. It's the why, right? And we cannot just start to say, man, we need to do better. We need to do that. Not, yeah, but let's look at the why. How do we get to the point to where violence is so, seem to be so prevalent, right? Violence is often caused by the desire for control, revenge, or power, right? Right. So, and it usually occurs as an impulse or a spur of the moment thing when emotions run high, right? So, I say the truth of it all is that we cannot address violent crimes without assessing first the root causes of the violent crimes, which include but are not limited to the breakdown and purposeful dismantling of the family, the black family, and the community. Because this is what we're talking about, right? Let's not dance around, right? Let's talk. This is Voice of the People podcast, right? We're talking about, we're talking about, what it is to, understand power, politics, and people, and speaking to the unique plight of being black in the rural South, in Alabama, in Dixieland. You understand me? This is, yeah. I wish I was in the land of cotton. Come on now. Look away, Dixieland. So speaking of that, we have to do more than pray. Prayer necessary, needed. Keep doing it. Let's do it. Let's keep rocking it. Let's pray together. Let's pray more. But watch this. We have to start assessing, and addressing. Here it is, assessing the issues, addressing these issues as a collective, And in order to do that, we're going to have to start to be very, very real. And yes, politics are even to be brought to bear on this. Politics and this ain't this. It's a somber thing to realize that things that go on in this community, in this town, in Tuskegee and Shorter and Franklin and all of Macon, these things that go on in Tuskegee, man, these violent things, these murders, they can only happen, and I won't say only happen, but they are more apt to happen in an environment that is conducive to violence. An environment that is set, watch this, that is set by the politics. I mean, wherever there are those who hold the reins of and hold the reins of power and have the ability to deny or, grant resources or even the flow of said resources, man, look, you have the ability to produce a climate that is conducive to love and safety and health and or a climate that is ridden with harm. Because that's what we're talking about. We ain't just talking about crime, we're talking about harm. You know what I'm saying? Like, some things that are criminal are not necessarily harmful. Like, they criminalize weed, because, it's a way that is really a money changer for, especially those black bodies that go into the prison industrial complex. And, yeah, so that's not so much harmful as it is, a murder is harmful. It's violent crime, but it's a harmful act, man. It's evil, it's wicked. And, climates are set by those in power. Every person has responsibility of their actions. But things do not happen. Actions are not taken, and these are not isolated events, and they're not happening in a vacuum. The greater context is, hey, politics are always involved to a degree that where, hey, it's a thermometer, not a thermometer. Excuse me, it's a thermostat. It's a thermostat. And so, what then needs to happen? Well, one thing among other things that should happen simultaneously, even, right? Simultaneously. One thing that needs to be sure to happen is that we as a people here in Tuskegee, here in Macon County, begin to understand how the politics work. We must know what's the role and purpose of people who are in offices, in places, so that when issues go on, we can then say, hey, what is being done as a precautionary measure to make sure that people, and I want you to hear, because I may not say what you think I'm about to say, what is being done as a precautionary measure to make sure people don't get to the point to where they feel so broken, so hurt, so powerless, and so oppressed and exploited to where they just bust and boil over, and with all kinds of other pressures on them with life. Y'all living in this same world that I'm living in. It's a whole lot going on. And the last thing that anyone should have to be worried about is having competent leaders doing what they should do in order to encourage a certain kind of atmosphere, ecosystem, a certain kind of community. And with that being said, I know that I've given a bunch of ranting and raving, but if you don't take anything away from episode 0 of the Voice of the People's podcast, I want you to take just this away. All right, hear me good when I say this. This is what you need to take away: that you as an individual need to understand and know to your best ability what in the world is local politics. Gotta understand it, gotta know it, and you gotta engage yourself in the process. And I'm here to help, and I won't say guide you through what you should know, and hopefully you'll find out how to go ahead and start to think critically about some things if you're not already, and start to really understand that things are not happening in a vacuum, and that politics should be brought to bear on every single thing. It does. And we're going to talk about these definitions. We'll define some things. I don't want to run too many away right here. I want you to be right where you are for now. And so, but just as a working, simple definition, when I speak on politics, meaning all activities associated with running or governing an area, that's inclusive of safety. That's, inclusive of the education, like all crossroads, everything runs through and has something to do with politics, or politics, say that the other way around, right? Politics has something to do, or has an impact on every aspect of our lives. And so, especially locally, we need to immediate impacts locally. We need to make sure we understand exactly what's going on. And, and people, I don't have to define that for you, and I won't insult your intelligence, but politics is one of those terms that can scare some people. They see voting, they see laws being passed, but they forget that, that something as simple as, hey, I want to give water to people because I'm a nice person, and I want to just stand in the square and just hand out water to people. And matter of fact, let me just set up a table. I want to hand out food as well. Well, now you got yourself an event, and you need a permit for that. And you get that permit because by going through the proper channels and municipalities, and you got to know how, in order to do that, you got to know a little bit about politics. You're politicking when you do that, every single aspect of our lives. And so I don't want that to frighten you or scare you away. Also, just a little working definition of power. We talk about the Voice of the People podcast, and we're going to be discussing people, power, and politics, and you can throw those words around. But I want us to have a working definition of power as well. And so when I say power, I mean a people, and in this sense, I'm meaning black people coming together, and all those people who are here empathizing with all of us who are in the struggle and being exploited. It means people coming together to form a political force, and electing representatives, or forcing their representatives who are already elected to speak their needs, rather than relying on established parties or some kind of other. You have the power, you have the strength, you have what it takes, right? Potentially to impact this city in the greatest way, by way of our numbers unifying together, and us in numbers, in great numbers, making the politicians, yeah, I said it, making those who are elected do exactly what we say that we want them to do. Don't give me that, we ain't gonna never have a black agenda, it's hard, everybody all over here, people all over there. Well, it's a new day. It's a new day. We got so many blueprints of success in different places, in different areas all over the country and the world. So here in Tuskegee, hey, look here. This ain't a different planet right here, and it's worked it before, and so let's work it. Let's work it. Mother Tuskegee deserves for her sons and daughters to fight for her sustenance. You know what I'm saying, and fight for our own children's legacies and our lives, our livelihoods. And in order to do that, we must be informed. We must make sure that we have the proper information to put it into action. Then we got to act. Once we know better, we got to do better. And so I'm really looking forward though to having this conversation further with you all, conversations and discussions and information around politics, power, people. Hey, this is the Voice of the People's podcast. It was good having you for these few minutes, and I hope you have a good rest of your day or night whenever you're hearing this. Hey, next time we come together, let's key in on Tuskegee, Alabama, and let's talk about the form of government that's operating here locally. Let's talk about the council and city manager form of government, and let's really dive into that thing. You may be surprised at what you may find out. Right? Love you guys, and as always, power to the people. Let me say it the right way. All the power to all the people. Bless up, man.